Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the Pre-Columbian Gentleman. Today we are coming at you from the Grand Plaza in Tikal. It's Monday morning about 6:30. The park opened at 6 and I'm one of the first few people that are here. It's a nice cool morning, a little drizzly, but it's just really cool. Everything's just coming alive right now. The birds and the animals are getting active. Just a really cool time to show you this place. I'm a little winded right now. It's about a 20-minute hike to get here. For those that don't know, this area was built on, this entire city was built on a watershed. So this is the very top of it, and the water flows down both sides, both ways. And that is why it's a pretty steep hike. The reason why it was built here like that is because back in the Maya times, this was all a swamp area. And so as you can imagine, it would be really tough to build like this in a swampy type of land. So the water runs down both ways, and what the ancient Maya did was they built reservoirs to collect the water, and so that was the water they had during the dry season. This city was actually first discovered back in 1840. There was an expedition by, I believe it was the governor of the Baton in Guatemala and an associate of his, and they actually came here and found this place. Although it's believed that this place always has existed to the Maya. They've always been here. They just abandoned the city area. And kind of a weird story, but so that expedition back in 1840 was published in a Berlin academic journal in the 1850s, and that was the first account of Tikal. Later expeditions back in the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s after that documented a lot more than that, but that was the first accounting. And I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of show you a little bit something, a little different view over here. So it's believed that the Maya in this area, they were the direct descendants of the Asian people that passed over the Bering land bridge 10,000 years ago and made their way down to this area, settled down here. And to this site, the first inhabitants were here about 600 BC, and that was the very beginning of Tikal. So this is Temple 1, or Temple of the Grand or Great Jaguar. And the reason why we know this is that there was a lintel at the very top of there. That was a wood beam across the front entrance there. And it says it dedicates this pyramid back in the 700s as the temple of the Grand Jaguar. One of the most important burials in Tikal is actually the king that this temple was dedicated to, and he's actually buried at the very center axis underneath the bedrock, which obviously goes down there below where the pyramid was built. And his name is actually mentioned in the lintel. And the earliest archaeologists here, they determined that this was built around 741 AD, I believe. And so when they uncovered the tomb, they found the pottery and just the way the style, the way the building was made, all points to a late classic period. And they ran some scientific tests. They did tests on the pottery, but also on the lintels that were up there. They did carbon testing, and that proved their point that this was indeed built around 741. And later on, when they were able to decipher the glyphs on the lintel, it actually has the dedicated date on which this was made. Back in 1956 to 69 is when they had the Tikal project down here, sponsored by the University of Pennsylvania, and they excavated a great majority of this area, as well as a lot of other areas, little temple groups that are around Tikal. And it was one of the first and earliest projects of archaeology, where they not only uncovered, but they also rebuilt and restored a good portion of this area of the city. And you can see here the sharp corners. That's all the restoration and the original is above there. So you can see the difference there. The earliest pictures, I believe, of this temple were from 1880s, and that was a Maudsley expedition, and he brought some locals in here, and they chopped down all the trees that had overgrown this Temple 1, and that was the earliest picture of Tikal that was published, but also of this specific temple. You can see how steep it is. So again, this is the reconstruction right here. And then that's the actual real temple that's underneath it. A lot of people call these pyramids just because of the shape. Yeah, they are shaped in a pyramid type of shape, but they're known as temples. A temple has one entrance or one door. And the way the Maya built, they would have a one-door temple, or they would have sorry, I'm kind of blanking out here. They would have a palace, and the palace was 3 doors. So that's the main difference. And then what you see in Egypt are straight pyramids with no openings or no tops. Again, it's quite steep. You can't go up here anymore. A tourist fell, I don't know, about 20 years ago, and obviously tumbled to their death. Super steep. It's a killer view though. I was up here before when you were allowed to go up there, and it's pretty breathtaking. It's a great view. The acoustics here in the Grand Plaza are amazing. You don't have to talk very loud, and you can hear other people speaking on the other side. So when they had ceremonies back in the day, you can imagine it was pretty powerful. You can see probably had drums and you know, priests up here at the top shouting, and people listening at the bottom. I mean, it must have been pretty fantastic. I'm gonna pan in there. So at the top of the temple, there is a king that is carved out of stone, and that would have been stuccoed over, and it's faded obviously over time, but still really cool. So back in the Maya times, this would have been all stuccoed over. So stucco is basically a limestone paste that the Maya made, and it would have smoothed this out perfectly smooth, and this entire area would have been painted red. I'm gonna go pan over here. This is the view to the North Acropolis. This grassy area, this is the plaza at the Great Plaza, and this grass would not have been here during the Maya times. What you're looking at is about 15 inches or 4 different layers of plaster or stucco, and that rises over or covers the bedrock here. And then the Maya kept building on top of that. This is actually the earliest construction here at the Grand Plaza. So this is the North Acropolis. Back about 200 BC is when the first platform was built here. That was the first layer. So none of the temples or any of the structures were actually here at that time. It was just a simple raised platform, and that was probably the earliest beginnings of the ceremonies that were held here, or the ceremonial center. And later on, about 100 BC is when they started to build temple structures on top of the platform. There are about 13 different layers of construction that occurred on the North Acropolis. They kept going higher and higher, and the way the Maya did was they just built over the previous construction. They would just fill the area and just keep on building. The neat thing about that is that it preserved perfectly the temples that were underneath it. And the way the pre-classic Maya built temples was that they had these really cool stucco masks that were on the facades or the outer part of the buildings. And a lot of those are really well preserved underneath there. What you would have seen here are 3 large temple structures. So this was the one on the right. This was the middle one. And then that was the one on the left. During the Tikal project in the 50s and 60s, they actually went through and tunneled through here and took down a good portion of the center temple, and they just left it that way because it exposed the really nice masks that were built there during the pre-classic times. Pre-classic is generally known as about 200 BC to about 250 AD, and then the classical period is 250 to about 900 AD. So that gives you a little bit of a time frame on when this occurred. And so, yeah, they decided just to go ahead and leave it rather than reconstruct it and build over what was there. Like I said, there was 13 different layers of construction over the years, and the majority of the construction stopped around 800 AD. This is also where they have the most important burials next to the Temple 1. So it tells you what an important site this is. One of the goriest burials found here in Tikal is actually underneath this area, or was underneath this area. And they found a king or a ruler, and he had 9 sacrificed victims with him in his burial. And he was encrusted with about, I think it was 70 pounds of jade between pectorals and necklaces and bracelets and whatnot. And to the Maya, jade was the most important thing. It was more important than, they didn't have gold back then because they didn't have the metals, but it was just the most important item to royalty. And only Maya royalty could afford or wear jade. Jade was a super green, beautiful color to the Maya, and it represented life, since the jungle is green. And it was very, very, very important. So whenever they find jade anywhere, it's always associated with Maya royalty. One of the videos I showed you was actually underneath the North Acropolis, and that was the tunnel that the archaeologists here during the Tikal project, they dug underneath there to find out where the bedrock is so they can gauge how tall this was and where the construction started and ended. So it's very cool. All these, I'm going to talk about this over here. So these upright stones or carvings, these are known as stela. And some of them are plain and some of them are really intricately and deeply carved. And then the round altars that you see there are known as altars or monuments. Something that was interesting that I learned is that if a stela, which is the tall part, if that is plain and not carved, then the monument or the altar will be uncarved. And then the opposite, if a stela is carved, then the monument will be carved as well. They don't mix and match. And here you can see these are replicas of the stela and the monuments there. And as you also can see that each one of these are all broken. So there's different theories on why they were broken. They were all broken intentionally. So it's not like they just fell over and broke, but they were all broken intentionally. So some of the theories, or one of the theories is that as new kings and rulers would take over, they would destroy the previous stela. And that being because the stela was basically a carving of the ruler or the king's accession, how they came to power, and then also conquests and victories. So obviously if a new king came to power, they would want to highlight themselves versus someone else, unless it was a direct line of ascension. The other theory is during the collapse of the Maya civilization, everything went chaotic and they just destroyed everything and basically defaced any kind of linkage to the rulers at the time. So yeah, so these are all over here. This here shows you still crumbled. And here's a little Guatemala. These are all over Tikal. Usually packs of 50 or more. So, but sometimes they'll go ahead and wander by themselves. So again, that's going back to the North Acropolis. And then what you see over here, this is Temple 2. This was built about the same time as Temple 1, about 741 AD. But this was actually built a little bit after. So Temple 1 came first, and then they built Temple 2. And it's also known as the Temple of the Masks. I'm going to pan in here. And the reason being is that you can see it's not quite as nice as it was back in the day, but there are masks up there. There's 1, 2, 3, and then there's the roof comb is all masks there. And again, this would have been all stuccoed over and would have been all painted red and beautiful. And this was the stairs that led up there. I have a video that I posted too that showed the stairs there on the side of this temple that go up to the top that would have been used as a kind of a off-stage area during ceremonies, so they could, I mean, who knows at the time, possibly bring up sacrificial victims, or just bring up different performers or different priests to the top, and without the people in the plaza being able to see because it was on the side. And another thing, if you notice, there's only 3 levels here, and it just seems like it's not finished, right? And I'm gonna pan back over here to the, sorry, we have some tourists that finally made it up here, but see how you have the different layers? I believe that's 9 different layers that go up to the top, with the 10th being the final stairway. But it just seems like this is just kind of unfinished. So there's a lot of theories that something happened that caused them to want to finish this and just cap it, because it just doesn't look like it was like intentionally left. All the other temples here, they're all finished and they go up the full layers, except for this one right here. But it's still beautiful. It's still a really cool structure. And then right here you see that's the stela, the upright one. And then you have the altar, the monument at the bottom. Yeah, let's see. We're gonna go ahead and pan over here. Just one thing that's kind of an interesting note is that this entire plaza is about 30 feet above. It's on a substructure, and it just gives you the it gives you an idea of just the grandness here, and how important it was, and how much went into building this. All this was built without metal tools, and also without the wheel. There was no carriages or carts or anything. So it was just all Maya power, cut one by one with stone tools, cutting into the limestone. And it's kind of interesting, on either side of both Acropolises, you'll find reservoirs. And so the way the Maya built, they would carve the stones from the quarry that was next to both of these areas. And they had, obviously they had a hole at that point. So they would smooth over that hole, and then they would stucco over it. And that would help retain the water, because just in general, this entire area, the limestone here is very porous. And unlike the Yucatan, where you have cenotes and underground rivers, here the water runs all the way through. It will not stop. So they found by stuccoing over the limestone that was there, they could retain the water through, to help them out from the rainy season into the dry season. And it worked out pretty well. Nowadays, the stucco is gone, and so the limestone is porous again, and so it will not hold water. So all the water has to be piped in here. Again, there are no cenotes or natural wells. This area right here is the Central Acropolis, and I posted some videos from the courts that are back there. I actually put a disclaimer on there. So it was actually not court number 6, but court number 2, which was where I was filming. And sorry, I got my courts mixed up. And that was actually the back of what was known as Mahler Palace, and that's where Mahler stayed back. I think it was 1894 and also 1905 when he did his expeditions here. And that's actually where he stayed. They call it Mahler Palace. But anyway, so this is the what they believe is the palace grouping, where the Maya kings and queen and nobility, the princes and princesses, where they lived, actual residence. And this is the part that's been excavated, and then they left this part unexcavated over here. But it was all part of the same grouping and the same area. And obviously, it shows how important the nobility were, because it's built on the most important area, or most important site here at Tikal, which is the Great Plaza. And then across from the ceremonial center, which is the North Acropolis. And again, this would have all been built up. It would all have been stuccoed over and all painted red. One of the interesting things, I know I pointed this out, and a lot of it's redundant, but some people haven't seen the previous videos, but this area has expanded and grown over the years. The Maya nobility, much like the people today, they would renovate and remodel their living areas. And so in addition to closing up doors, sealing up windows, putting up new doors and new windows, they would build up and expand on the living areas, so giving themselves more space. And a lot of people look here and they say, well, it doesn't look very hospitable, very livable. Obviously, this is the front side. The more private side would have been towards the back, facing the courts that were inside there, where they had more privacy. But this would have been very lush, you would have seen a lot of excess here, a lot of stuff, just basically kind of what you see today when you see some of the people that are wealthy. They like to show it off, and depends on the cultures and whatnot. You know, the Louis Vuitton bags and the Rolex watch, and just, you know, the draping of gold. The Maya people were much the same, and they wanted to show off their wealth and show their status, and much with their homes as well too. So you'd see pelts, and there would have been drapes on all the doorways and awnings, and just all the cool things that you see about the daily life of the Maya. And we know a lot about that by the ceramics. So the Mayas did write using glyphs, and so a lot of the glyphs are still here on the invisible with the stone, but also mostly on the ceramics. And the ceramics talked about their lives and how they lived, but also showed it. You can see pictures of kings on thrones and attendants helping them, and just the the way they ate and drinking the cacao, which is the royal Maya chocolate beverage. And that was all in the Maya ceramics. So that shows you how important the ceramics are, because that's how we learn about how the Maya lived. The Mayas did write books. There's only five that have survived over the years, and they're actually more late classic. They're not classic period. But when the Spanish conquered the Maya, they destroyed all the books they could find, because they thought it was devilish in terms of some of the sacrifice and the blood and just the different gods. They wanted just to erase all of that. But also 1,500 years ago, it's really hard for in the jungle environment for anything perishable to survive. That's why the majority of items that have survived are ceramic, stone, bone, a little bit of wood. Most of the wood has also decomposed and vanished at the time. So anyway, so that's the Central Acropolis. That's where the Maya lived. Oh, and the other reason we think that the Maya lived here, or we believe, there are no burials here. So unlike the common Maya who buried and a lot of other cultures, ancient cultures, who buried their dead underneath where they lived, underneath the floors, the Maya nobility did not. So there are no burials underneath here. And it's just believed that, number one, it wasn't a holy place for them. It wasn't an important place for them to be buried there, but also that they just didn't want to, or have the need to have their ancestors buried there. And instead, their ancestors were buried over here in the North Acropolis, which is like the most important ceremonial center. And so that's where you'll find all the important burials there. So just a really cool time right now before the tourists get here. It's a Monday morning. It was drizzling this morning a little bit. It's just kind of all the animals are coming alive. So over here, I'm gonna take you to the ball court. And this is the, I believe this would be like considered the royal ball court at Tikal. It's also one of the smallest ball courts in all of Mesoamerica. The largest ball court being the one at Chichen Itza, which is huge. Here you can see a little stairway, and that went up to where the spectators would sit. And this is the ball court. So what tells you that this ball court is very important is because of the location. It's right here in the Great Plaza, the Grand Plaza at Tikal. And let me show you right here. This is another staircase that goes up. So these would have been the spectator areas up here, where you would watch the ball game, and this was actually the playing field. The game was much like the game of soccer today, so that never really left. You would have teams, they believe anywhere from 3 to up to 5, and you would try and get this rubber ball into, in some places it was rings, and then in other places it was just to the other side, and that would be a score. And the ball was actually a solid rubber ball, unlike what the soccer ball is today. It was about 15 pounds, and we know that because some have actually survived in some of the marsh areas of Veracruz. And so they found that, and they actually have a real living ball, and they're solid rubber, just made by layers of rubber over on top of each other, and they're quite heavy. I'm gonna do a separate video showing you what the ball game was about and how they played it, but just a general thing that they wore these really heavy, they call them yokes, but they're like leather hip pads, and they were solid leather, and that's what allowed them to hit the ball, because obviously, unlike soccer, you can't kick or knee the ball that's 15 pounds and solid rubber. So they would use these hip pads that would protect them, but also allow them to hit the ball and not hurt themselves. Right up here, again, that's the view to the Central Acropolis, and that's where the kings and queens of the time and nobility lived. So much like we do today when we watch sports or football or whatever on TV from our home and living room, the Maya nobility could do the same, and they could watch the ball game take place over here. There are 3 other ball courts here at, I'm sorry, there are 4 because there's one over on the East Plaza, but there are 3 other main ball courts that are here. They're much larger than this, but this was definitely more important because of the location. The other ones being over by I believe it's the 7 Temple area, which is further on by Mundo Perdido, which is the Lost World complex, and that's their astronomy platform. So just a lot going on here, just a lot of construction, and it's pretty awe-inspiring. Like I said, the Maya built all this using stone tools and just human labor, no wheel, and just by cutting rocks. There's a lot of different theories to the collapse of the Maya and what happened. One thing that was kind of interesting that I was told, and a lot of the information I got here was from books, but I want to thank and acknowledge a really good friend of mine who passed away last year, Antonio Ortiz Jr., who was the son of Antonio Ortiz, who was one of the main guides here, and from Guatemala, from Tikal, back during the Tikal project back in 1956 to 69. And I did about 12 tours with him, private tours, and he showed me all this and explained to me a little bit about the details and a little bit more that stuff that the books don't really talk about. And really learned a lot from him. And I was here back in 2018 and 19, and was supposed to come back here in 20 and do another few tours with him. And obviously COVID hit, and Guatemala shut down and couldn't get back here. And he passed away last year in 21, so kind of sad I didn't get to see my friend, but his spirit lives on with me, his knowledge lives on with me, and I really thank him for everything he's shown me and taught me about this really special area. The stucco, let me talk about the stucco. The stucco is basically a limestone paste that was applied to the outer surfaces of all this, all the construction. The Maya wanted all this area smooth, and they also painted it bright red, so it was pretty awe-inspiring when you saw it. But to get to stucco, and to make stucco, what you do is you take regular limestone, and then you put 1 part limestone to 3 parts wood. You light the wood on fire, and that makes the limestone soft enough where it can crumble to a powder. And then you just take simple water, and you mix that powder, and you create a stucco paste. And that's the paste that was covered over, much like plaster is today, and actually stucco in some areas of where you live to cover the houses the way they are. When you really think about how large this area is, I didn't talk about this, sorry, but there were, it was initially believed that there was about 10,000 people that lived in Tikal, in the general area, but well, it was about 10,000 people that lived in Tikal, with about maybe up to 90,000 that lived in the, and that's a high estimate, lived in the general area surrounding the city. That was the old estimate. Back in 2018, 19, about 2018, they did a LiDAR study, which basically mapped a large portion of this area, of the Maya areas down here in Guatemala, and they found a lot more buildings than they thought previously, and so they revised those estimates, and they believe of 1 million people lived here at Tikal, up to possibly 500,000. What you were hearing there, that was a local guide, and he was showing the acoustics that are here at the Grand Plaza. It creates a echo when you make sound here. So you hear that little, it's just one of those kind of mysteries and how they're able to create it. But you hear that chirping that comes off the top of the buildings. It's pretty cool. So, so obviously, like I was talking about, this area was a lot bigger, or is a lot bigger than they initially thought, and they were able to uncover roads, causeways, outer buildings, new structures here, and it's a lot bigger than they thought. Okay, so like I said, I was talking about the stucco and about what it takes to get there. So there are a lot of different theories about the collapse of the Maya. So drought obviously is a very important one, because we do have we do have studies that show that there was a drought here back during the Maya collapse. They believe it's about 850 to 900 AD. That's obviously a very solid theory. Another theory is that the Maya were a lot like we are. Like I said, we talked earlier about the remodeling and things that we do, but you're talking about an area that has limited resources. The Maya were very good at adapting to these resources and building an incredible empire here, where there things are limited, but they say the estimates are up to about 11 million people in the entire Maya area that lived here, in the jungle, with the limited resources. And like I said, they were able to master that and thrive and flourish here. But when you think about it, like all this area right here, all these trees, none of this would have been here during Maya time. This was all smoothed out. That way you could see from miles and miles and miles away the grandeur of the Maya. You could see all these temples and these palaces that are super high, and it basically talked about showed the power and the might of the Maya people. And it took a lot of trees to get there. Number one, you need to deforest the areas, and then also to make the limestone, the stucco, the limestone paste. Remember, we talked about 3 parts trees to 1 part limestone. And obviously with the rains and how it was so super heavy here, they would constantly be stuccoing over all this construction year after year, over and over again. And then also the reservoirs that held the water, those had to be stuccoed over when they dried up, so that way they could hold water. And those were actually even bigger than some of these temples that you see. Just the actual floor of the plaza itself was actually stuccoed over too. So it's a lot of resources you're using, and that's in addition to what 11 million people generally using wood to cook, to build fires at night. And then also the Maya common people, they lived in huts in circular groups that were close to this to the city areas, and that required wood as well. And so another theory is just basically that they overused the resources that they had here. And without the trees and vegetation, a lot of the rain stopped, and causing the drought. And so, kind of not to get political or anything, but like a miniature version of global warming, but just in a very local area here. And without being able to feed their people, the cities really suffered. A little bit about the kings and the accession. So basically, kings, in some cases, were not considered deities, but as close to as deities as you can get for mortal people. When they died, they were considered deities or gods. But during the time when the kings were still alive, they were considered the only voice, or the only way the common people could talk to the gods. And so that's how they held their power. Especially in the area of Tikal, where you see 500,000 people living here, all obeying one person. If they have any doubts to that person, they're probably not going to believe them. So when the droughts came, the people questioned, well, the kings can't bring back, the king can't bring back, the rains. So obviously he's unable to talk to the gods anymore. So why are we listening to them? And so that's another explanation of how the cities collapsed, because it was a one king system. Once the king was taken down or removed from power, there was no other accession. Once the nobility is gone, that's it. And so the people just basically left the cities, destroyed the monuments and altars and the stela that you see here, and left the cities. The Maya people never really left the area. They're still here. You can see them, just every day. But back during the time, they just left the cities and just kind of migrated to different areas where there were more resources. One of those areas being the Yucatan Peninsula. And so the classical period collapsed around 850 to 900 AD. But it is the post-classic period flourished in the northern Yucatan. Chichen Itza, Tulum, Coba, some of those areas were huge centers. And coincidentally, those areas actually had underground water wells called cenotes and underground rivers. So they did have more resources at the time. So a lot of the migration took place and went northeast towards the Yucatan Peninsula. But a lot of the Maya decided just to stay here. And here's another example of the Maya that stayed here. So this is added on by the Maya that are here today. And it's a ring where they burn fires, incense, offerings to, it's kind of an interesting cross of a religion between the old Maya gods and also Catholicism. And so they practice their own ceremonies here, and the government here is, back in the day, they weren't very Maya friendly, and there was a lot of racism that went on, and they were actually treated the Maya people very poorly. And now they take care of them, and they allow them to perform their ceremonies here. And it's kind of a cool thing. And they actually are teaching them to speak the old Maya languages, and teaching them to write the old Maya glyphs. So that's really cool. But anyway, so that's just another theory about what happened here and why you had the collapse. It's just that the Maya outdid their resources here, and once the kings could not bring back the rains and feed the people, then all their power was lost, and then the people just basically took over, revolted, and everything collapsed at that point. Everyone just fled. So just kind of a really cool time here. I wanted to share this with you guys. Like I said, it's a Monday morning, it's about 7:30 now. Had some people trickling through here, but the majority of people won't get here until about 10. They have a bus, the buses that take them from Flores into Tikal. They get here about 10 a.m. But this is like the nice quiet time, and they're able to show you a lot of cool stuff here, give you some information and some education about the area, and it's just really neat. This is just a really magical place. Obviously you can tell I love this place. It's just really cool, and people ask me like why I keep coming back to this site, and to me it's just a very magical site. To me it's the center of the Maya universe, and a lot of people will argue that Palenque could be that place in southern Mexico, or Chichen Itza, but to me this is just a really special place, and Tikal is just really cool. Oh, one thing I didn't talk about either was that a lot of the larger construction here started back up in like around the 700 AD. About 400. Well, let me go a little bit earlier. So they've just uncovered, using the LiDAR information, a compound that is, let me see, it's going to be, I'm going to pan there and show you kind of the general direction, but it's going to be right where you see Temple 2 right there. It's going to be down that way, and that's just south of Mundo Perdido, or Lost World. That's where they have that platform, and then also where they have the 3 ball courts just south of that area. And that's they uncovered a compound using LiDAR, and it looked very similar to a Teotihuacan compound. And so they are currently digging there right now, and they believe, I'm gonna go ahead and just pan over here back to Temple 1. So I've shown you some of the videos. You have the Teotihuacan platforms here, but they believe that obviously Teotihuacan was a very important site in central Mexico. It was really, it started to be populated around 100 BC, but came to power around about 250 AD, and then it collapsed around 600 AD. But at the time, it was one of the mightiest civilizations or areas or centers. Anyway, so it's believed that that is a compound here in Tikal, where the Teotihuacans had like an embassy, and so during early classic period, and so something happened at that embassy where it's in one of the stelas. Remember we talked about the stelas over here that document the sessions and whatnot that are that happen here at Tikal. But there is documentation there that says that the mighty army invaded from the north around 400 AD, and then the next day the king died. So they just leave it at that. And so they believe that that's when the Teotihuacans came to Tikal and basically took over and then conquered and then put their own ruler to assert their control. And there's a theory now floating around that's possibly something happened at that embassy where the people here at Tikal were not happy, or something happened with the people from Teotihuacan, and you know, who knows what occurred, but it was enough to send an army down here to Tikal and take it over. And so from 400 to 700 AD, this entire area was ruled or by Tikal. I'm sorry, by Teotihuacan. And you can see the influence in some of the platforms. Some of the ceramics change a little bit, and you can see the influence from Teotihuacan on that. And then back around 700 AD is when something happened again, and that's when the people here at Tikal took back the city and reasserted their power. And that's when you see this level of construction: Temple 1, Temple 2, Temple 3, 4, and 5 actually also were built in the 700s. So it's kind of a different, they took it to the next level, and they just built higher and larger, and they're asserting their power. And that's when Tikal really became a power. It was during the late classical period, after the time of Teotihuacan influence here. And that's when all this was built. And obviously the city probably expanded, grew as it got richer, more trade. And just kind of a little interesting story about this place that I found fascinating. And now it's been proven with the LiDAR technology that uncovered the Teotihuacan compound. And so what they're hoping maybe to discover is just direct proof of that theory. So like what happened in Teotihuacan, Teotihuacan was kind of similar. But it was more of a business or merchant class that was ruling the city, and there were kind of like you see a lot like what happened today is like you have those that have and those that have not. And what happened in Teotihuacan was you had a rich business class that lived very opulently. They had nicer they had apartment compounds, but they were obviously nicer. You had beautiful murals and just a richer way of living. And the people of Teotihuacan did the same thing. They revolted, and they actually burned out. And they still have the evidence that they burned through the city and revolted. And the same thing happened here. The people just left and moved on. Although never really left the area, but they did move on. So there's a theory floating around that that's what happened here. And so they're trying to discover that with the current day going on at here at Tikal. So pretty exciting. What you're seeing there, the tarps, they're doing reconstruction in that area. So they're excavating it. Maybe that's not the best word, because that area has been explored, but they're reconstructing it and kind of building it back to where it was. And they do that through time to time. So again, that's the North Acropolis, and that's the most important ceremonial center here at Tikal. And we're just painting over here. So I think that's it, you guys. People are going to start coming in here now because it's getting a little bit later in the day, but just kind of a really cool overview of Tikal and the place here. And just wanted to show this and share this with you. And hope you guys learned something new. And thanks for watching. And till next time.